What's going on, travelers? Sam here, back at it again for another video. With the 4.6 live stream behind us and with Arlecchino's release quickly approaching, I wanted to take some time to discuss how I think she stacks up in the current Pyro DPS tier list. In today's video, we're going to go over each 5-star Pyro DPS that we currently have and where I think she kind of stacks up. We're going to kind of cross compare each character against her. So let's get into it. So let's start off with Dia. Moving on to the Luke. I'm kidding, Dia. Sorry, that was very rude.
Got him!
So obviously, Dia didn't have a very good initial release. She has quite a few problems with her kit. I myself was very hyped for this character. I thought she was going to be kind of my main DPS carry. Unfortunately, the way her kit works, the fact that you can literally jump and you cancel her burst isn't great. That being said, ever since her release, she has gotten progressively better. You can definitely pair her with Nahida and Farina and do kind of a version comp, and it can do some pretty decent damage. I'm not saying it's great, but with her super armor, it can definitely be situational. And if your Nahida's cracked out and your Farina's cracked out, I do think you're going to be able to do some pretty good damage. Not saying you're going to be able to clear 100% of all the abyss floors, but I do think situationally it can be pretty good. But if we're comparing Dia to other DPS Pyro characters, I definitely don't think she can compete. Next, let's talk about Diluc. Now, I don't know about you, but when Genshin first came out, Diluc was a super hype character for me. Ever since we got to use him in that one domain run, I was like, dude, this guy is literally Batman. He's got like the full blown black robe. My guy looks sweet. He's got this huge flaming claymore. My guy looks cool. Now, Diluc unfortunately doesn't have, the best multipliers for his abilities, except for one, which we'll discuss shortly. So he definitely doesn't really match up well against other top tier Pyro DPSs like Hu Tao, like Yoimiya, like Lani. That being said, with the release of Cloud Retainer, I do think because his plunge multiplier is relatively high, I do think he got, a relatively decent buff with Cloud Retainer. That being said, you definitely have to be willing to do the Zhao Pogo stick playstyle. Like, you have to be willing to do that. I know it's not everybody's cup of tea, but because his plunge multiplier isn't bad and because Cloud Retainer now exists, I do think, he is a fairly decent Pyro DPS. Definitely, like I said, not as great as the other ones, but I do think he can shine in certain instances. His burst has a pretty big range. So, in the Abyss, if you're fighting one enemy on one side and then maybe you're, running low on time and there's an enemy on the other side of the arena, you can hit him and, maybe you'll save the run. But all in all, I think Diluc is solid, not top tier, but solid, solid, solid. Next, let's talk about Klee. Now, Klee is also another character that I don't personally enjoy. Obviously, this isn't my account for full warning. This is actually one of my viewers' accounts, but I don't enjoy her. I think she's very clunky. Of course, she's absolutely adorable, and it's funny that we have this little girl that has these huge explosive bombs, but at the same time, I do think she's kind of clunky. Charge attack mechanic is a little bit nuanced, and it doesn't feel great. You can't really, if you're running her with Venti, you can't really group up her bombs well. She doesn't pair as well with other top tier Hydro characters like other Pyro DPSs. So all in all, Klee is fine. I definitely wouldn't recommend her as my top pick for a Pyro DPS. So I definitely think Arlecchino, significantly clears Klee. But at the same time, if you like the character, definitely go for her. But at the same time, I wouldn't recommend investing into her heavily upfront as your main Pyro DPS. Next, let's talk about Yoimiya. Now, Yoimiya is actually a super cracked character. I didn't really realize how cracked she was. I don't personally have her on my account. I didn't start using her until I started doing viewer Abyss runs, but she is actually a really good character. Naturally, she can pair very well with Yelan and Xingqiu because she is a normal attack damage dealer. You compare her with Zhongli and Bennett, and she absolutely shreds enemies. Obviously, the only real issue with her is that she is single target based. So, you definitely have to make sure that you're dealing significant damage really quickly to a single target. before you can move on to the next target. That's really the only issue. She's very easy to build. You don't care about her burst. So all in all, I do think Yoimiya is a top tier character for Pyro specifically. Now, if you've heavily invested to her, maybe you have her signature weapon. I don't know if I would recommend getting Arlecchino if you already have a Yoimiya, just because she is a very good character. She covers the Pyro element very well. At the same time, they are different weapon type users. They have different styles. So if you want to kind of double down into Pyro, I definitely think you can have both and be very successful. But Yoimiya is super cracked. I actually, this might be kind of a hot take. I kind of prefer her at C0 over Hu Tao, which I'll discuss later. But I just think she feels smoother. Obviously, she's single target, which is her only drawback. But at the same time, I still think she is a phenomenal, phenomenal Pyro DPS carry. Moving on to Lani. Now, Lani, similar to Yoimiya, a character I never really used until I started doing viewer Abyss runs, but Lani is a very, very solid character. I personally don't really like bow users that rely on charge attacks. I think it's kind of a slow mechanic, so I'm not really a big fan of Ganyu, and I don't really love the fact that Lani kind of heavily depends on his charge attack. That being said, I do think his mechanic is a little bit more unique and actually a little bit more fun. You know, you have to kind of manage how much HP you have to ensure that you're getting a stack for your Grand Malkin. And, you know, once you have a sufficient enough stacks, at least 2 or 3, you pop his burst. As long as Bennett's burst is up, it does a pretty good amount of damage. So I actually do think Lani is a pretty good Pyro DPS. I would say him, Yoimiya, and Hu Tao are kind of the top 3 in my opinion. And I think you could kind of go either or between him and Yoimiya. I think maybe you give the edge to, you know, Lani because he can pair well with Farina. And, you know, he does have a little bit more AoE baked into his kit. I personally prefer the usability and playstyle of Yoimiya just a little bit better, but both are phenomenal characters. And I do think as far as, you know, raking him against Arlecchino, I do think she kind of clears him because, again, for me, not the biggest fan of charge attack bow characters, but at the end of the day, he is a very, very good Pyro DPS. And I think if you have him, again, I don't know if it's worth spending your precious primos to get another heavily needing invested Pyro DPS. Now, last but certainly not least is obviously Hu Tao. Now, Hu Tao has been the queen of Pyro since her release. She is the pinnacle of a Pyro DPS. She can literally be paired and get so much utility from, you know, 2 of the best Hydro characters in the game in Yelan and Xingqiu. You get a significant amount of damage increase by having the double Hydro. You pair her with Zhongli, so she has a shield, so she can't get one shot when she has low health. And she slaps. She is insane. She definitely has been the best Pyro DPS in a long time. She's still one of the best DPS characters in the game. Now, as I alluded to earlier, I do think at C0 that Hu Tao is a little bit cumbersome. I don't like having to jump cancel. I don't think it's a very, you know, user friendly or fun mechanic. Now, do you need to jump cancel? No, absolutely not. But definitely at C0, if you want to maximize her overall DPS, you really have to become relatively proficient with jump canceling. I'm not saying it's difficult to do. Me personally, I don't like having to think about it or manage it. So I think until you get her C1, I actually prefer Yoimiya if both characters are at C0. But that's just me. Obviously, I know Hu Tao is insane. She has, you know, self-sustain built into her kit via her burst, which is awesome. And, you know, the fact, even though she says hilly billy, silly troll 5 million times, she still is a top tier character. I really like this character. However, I didn't get her on my main account because I was saving for a character like Arlecchino. So, now that we have talked about every other Pyro DPS in the game, how do I think Arlecchino is going to stack up against them? I think that upon her release, Arlecchino will be the new best Pyro DPS in the game. I do think she will supplant Hu Tao from her throne. She's going to usurp her. I just think canonically, you know, she is the 4th Fatui, which for all my Bleach fans out there, she's basically Ulquiorra. And we know how busted Ulquiorra was. She is the number 4 Fatui, so canonically, she's strong. And just based on what we've seen, albeit limited, what we saw in the live stream, she looks insane. She is a normal attack based character, so she's going to be able to work well with Yelan and Xingqiu. I personally think my team I'm going to use her in initially is going to be Yelan and Kazuha and Bennett. I definitely want to pair her with Farina to see how that works, but I do think she is going to come in, be the I don't want to say by far, but I do think she is going to be the best Pyro DPS at C0 because I do think at C0 she is going to be a lot more user friendly than Hu Tao. And then because she has a good amount of AoE in her kit, because it looks like her attacks have pretty good sweeping range, I do think she's going to be able to outscale Yoimiya on an overall DPS basis as well as Lani. But that's pretty much it. I just wanted to give my overall thoughts on Arlecchino and then how she compares to the other Pyro DPSs in the game. I am so excited for this character. I have been waiting for a Pyro DPS on my main account forever. I skipped Hu Tao. I skipped Yoimiya. My Diluc, he's fine. I don't have Klee. I don't have Lani. I was very bummed by Dia. So I have been waiting for this moment pretty much for 3 years. So I'm personally going to be summoning, going pretty hard on Arlecchino. I'm going to be doing my summons here live on YouTube, so little self-plug. But that's pretty much it. I really just wanted to kind of give my overall thoughts on Arlecchino and where I think she sits amongst the Pyro DPSs we currently have. But comment down below. I really just wanted to provide my own insight. Let me know if this video helped. Have you invested heavy into the Pyro DPSs? Are you still going to go for Arlecchino even if you have, quite a few of them? Are you all in for Father? Are you skipping? But I'm genuinely curious to get your guys' thoughts. And as always, I appreciate you all so much. And I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.